Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. It is 2 o'clock now, so I'll go ahead and start the introductions, and a few more people might be joining us, but we can get started anyway. I am Laura De Palma, the marketing manager here at Renew International, and I am thrilled to have you all with us today, and very excited to welcome our own sister Honora to speak to us about Earth Day. I know she's very passionate and active on this subject, and she's done a lot of exclusive work about it in Long Island. And we're also joined by many of our young panelists here today, who Sister Nora will introduce. Before we get started, I would just like to mention that we're going to save a little time at the end for some questions. So if anything occurs to you while we're going through the webinar, please feel free to type it in the Q&A box at the bottom. It should be in the toolbar right next to your mute button and your video button. You'll see a little box with 2 conversation bubbles that says Q&A. So if you have any questions about the discussion, any questions that occur to you, or even any technical difficulties, definitely feel free to share them in that box and we will address them at the end of the session, or I will try and help you with any technical difficulties as we go. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sister Honora. Oh, Sister Honora, I think you're still muted.
That helps. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. I know Laura welcomed you, but I would also like to welcome you. And I'm delighted to be able to do this with you today. I have 4 panelists with me. I was going to say friends, but we're not quite friends yet. We might become friends. We have Julia and Braden from Immaculata. We have Caitlin from Mount St. Dominic's Academy. And we have Dean Muniz from St. Joseph's Regional School in Montvale with us. And you'll hear a lot more from them this afternoon than you will from me. But before we begin, I thought that I would just like to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do this afternoon. We have an hour, and I want to use it well, and I don't want to bore you. So I'm going to do a little bit of background on Earth Day, just so that we all get to the same page at the same time. We will have 2 very brief videos that are under 3 minutes. And then the rest of our time, we're going to spend hearing from our panelists, high school students, juniors and seniors, who have been involved in the care of our common home and have a passion for taking care of our planet. So all of that being said, I again say thank you for joining us. And I would like to begin with this very brief video from NASA that talks about our planet, our home.
The third rock, the blue marble, Earth, home. Every person, place, or thing we know, everything we do, every memory we make, it's here on this pale blue dot. It's just one rocky planet in one solar system in one galaxy among billions. Even as we explore space, we study our home planet. We see it like no one else, an expansive ecosystem. The vegetation, the air, the water, the ice. Our data improves the way we grow food and how we manage the land we cultivate. NASA has over 20 satellites, measuring the height of oceans and inland waters, clouds and precipitation, carbon dioxide, and much more. For decades, our data has tracked how all these Earth systems interact. From above, we see the connections. Cities transition into farmlands. Tributaries flow into rivers, into the sea. Winds move clouds around the planet. Beyond these observations, NASA's ability to model and anticipate how the planet is changing helps communities around the world prepare. We see our changing planet, hurricanes, volcanoes, fires, and we see the impacts of humans, melting ice, rising temperatures. Earth's climate has changed and is still changing. Our data gives us the understanding to adapt and to protect our home planet in new ways. Our electric flight technologies will reduce fuel and save energy. We will make cleaner air travel possible. By understanding our changing world, we improve lives and safeguard our future. The future of our little rock in the universe, our Earth, our home.
I would like to ask our panelists to please unmute yourselves and to leave yourself unmuted for the rest of the program. That video from NASA is rather important. It shows us that we have data about climate change, and that's really important as we make decisions. Did any of you have any reaction to anything you saw on that video? A thought, an observation?
I really liked when it went over NASA's new technologies and how they're pushing towards this this future where technology doesn't have a take, a give and take from the environment. It's more without that, and I really love that sort of future.
Okay, thanks. You know what I was thinking, that from above, you don't see any borders. We're all one. Braden, would you like to say something?
I would. I think when the video said preparing for the future, I think in order to prepare for the future, we also have to change our actions now to better impact the future for our future that's coming.
Great. So you have to act now for the future. Terrific. Okay, that having been said, I would just like to give you an overview of sort of how we got here. So Laura, can I see the next slide? This Earth Day 2024 is the 54th Earth Day that we are celebrating. And the history of Earth Day is really interesting. If you look at this top flag here in the left-hand side of the slide, that's the years of the Vietnam War. And the Vietnam War was very contentious in our country. And at that time, we had a mandatory draft so that every young man who turned 18 was obliged to be available to go to war. Well, there were a lot of people who were not in agreement, not only with the draft, but with the war. And so college campuses in particular began protesting. And you can understand why. They were the age that would be being sent to war. So that's what was going on in those 55 to 75 years. But in 1962, on the 1st here, Rachel Carson came out with a book called Silent Spring. And that was the first time that we had scientific data that said our environment and pollution is really negatively impacting human beings. And then a couple of years later, there was 2 terrible oil spills in the middle of the country. And a senator from Wisconsin, Gaylord Nelson, had read Rachel's book, and he was aware of the impending climate crisis that was coming. And so he thought, gee, if we could mobilize all those college students to get on taking care of the environment, maybe we could change it around. And so he organized the first Earth Day in 1970. And he scheduled it between spring break and final exams so that most college students would be able to be a part of it. And it worked. 20 million people showed up for that first Earth Day. And so every year since, we've been celebrating Earth Day. Now, in 2015, something else happened that was rather important, and that was that Pope Francis realized the urgency of the climate crises and that people weren't taking it seriously. And so he wrote a book and an exhortation called Laudato Si, and he invited everybody in the world to take care of our planet, the Earth, that if we don't have a planet, we're not going to be able to live. The planet will survive, but we won't. And so he asked high schools and colleges and hospitals and parishes and dioceses and families and religious congregations to form a plan, a 7-year plan of helping to create a healthier environment. The cries of the earth, the cries of the poor, our economic system, many, many areas. So that was in 2015. It was a clarion call. A lot of people haven't paid much attention. And so last year he came out with Laudato Deum, encouraging us that there's an urgency to this. We can't just sit back. So here we are at 2024, Earth Day 54. And this year, the theme for Earth Day is plastics versus the planet. In terms of plastics, before we see the very brief video that's going to talk about the problem with plastics, is there anything any of our panelists want to say about plastics? I want to say they're really convenient.
I think
I
that,
would.
Dean,
You can go first.
Okay. I think that plastics today are very harmful for a lot of our ocean life and a lot of the animals because they're taking in all of these microplastics, not understanding the harm that's being caused to them. And ultimately, it's harming a lot of like the species that we rely on every day.
Including humans. Dean?
Yeah, jumping off on that, plastics are definitely the most blatant and invasive threat we face in terms of pollution. And that's, I think, just because they get absolutely everywhere. As I think you brought up before, they've gotten into our water that we drink in the water bottles that we have so often. They've gotten into the fish we eat, and more recently, they've gotten into our own flesh and blood, which is just horrifying. So I think plastics are just
But they're so convenient, Dean. But they're so convenient.
But so dangerously invasive. I think the negatives definitely outweigh the positives.
Okay, great. Thanks. Julia or Braden, do you want to say anything? You don't have to.
Yeah, I'd like to say like what you were mentioning is how like plastics are just seen as convenient and how the dangers and problems with plastics have been normalized and ignored so much that people don't really understand that we don't need plastics to live. It's just people want it and find it convenient. But I think it's important that we realize that we just have to take that extra step and put in an extra step of work because we don't need it if it's just convenient to us. And there's so many better alternatives that we could use if we truly tried and wanted to make the difference.
Thanks. Thanks. Great. Okay, Laura, can you show us the next quick video?
Welcome to a special video about single-use plastics. Today, we're going to explore the dark side of these seemingly harmless materials that have become an everyday part of our lives. Join me as we uncover the devastating impact single-use plastics have on our environment and the beautiful creatures we share this planet with. First, let's understand what single-use plastics are. They are products designed to be used only once before they are thrown away or recycled. Think of items like plastic straws, water bottles, cutlery, and grocery bags. Although they seem convenient, they come with a heavy environmental cost. The production of single-use plastics begins with the extraction of fossil fuels, such as oil and natural gas. These raw materials are then processed to create various types of plastic resins. The resins are molded into the plastic products we use daily, consuming a considerable amount of energy and generating pollution in the process. The production of single-use plastics is energy-intensive, releasing large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. These emissions contribute to climate change, further exacerbating the problem. Disposing of single-use plastics is no easy feat. Many plastics end up in landfills, where they can leach harmful chemicals into the ground. Others are incinerated, releasing toxic pollutants into the air. A significant amount of plastic waste also finds its way into our oceans, threatening marine life and ecosystems. Unlike organic materials, plastics do not biodegrade quickly. Some types of plastic can take hundreds of years to break down, persisting in the environment and causing harm to wildlife and ecosystems for generations. Animals can become entangled in plastic waste or mistake it for food, leading to injury or death. Microplastics, tiny plastic particles, have also been found in the food chain, posing potential risks to human health. The environmental impact of single-use plastics is undeniable. It's time for us to reconsider our reliance on these products and find sustainable alternatives. By reducing our plastic consumption and supporting eco-friendly initiatives, we can help protect our planet for future generations. Let's make a change together. Start by sharing this video and raising awareness about the harm of single-use plastics. Remember, every little step counts. Worksheets relating to this short video can be downloaded by creating.
Thank you, Laura. Just a fact that I just came across recently. January the 8th, the researchers at Rutgers and Columbia published their findings. They counted and identified in bottled water an average of 240,000 detectable plastic fragments in 1 liter of water. So drinking 1 liter out of a plastic bottle, there's a possibility of your ingesting 240,000 plastic fragments. Rather sobering when we wonder where all of our newfound flus and diseases are coming from. Well, we never had autism before. We have it now. Gee, I wonder why. So anyhow, all of that being said, I'd like to now turn over to our panelists and to hear from young people about what they think and hope and are concerned for. There's been a lot of talk about mental health and the impact of crisis, the climate crises, and the urgency of it, the impact of that on young people. I'd like to ask our panelists, because I know they've done some work on this, what are your friends and your student brothers and sisters saying? What are other young people saying? Is the climate crisis impacting them in terms of their attitudes, their behaviors, their dreams and hopes and plans? Any one of you can go first. Just let's have one person talk at a time.
I'll go first. going to St. Joe's, an all-boys school myself, uh, I'd say sadly, the majority of people don't seem to have much of any interest at all. And this isn't, I believe in a strange way, it's almost this doomsday mindset where either you're in denial about the situation or you think that you can't do anything at all. So I think kids essentially go on with their lives ignoring it. And I think this is definitely prevalent in this, especially our generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dean.
Similarly to Dean's point, I agree. Going to an all-girls school, the problem is not whether people are putting action into what they're believing, because I know some of like my friends and family believe that they don't. In order for change to happen, it's not just going to start with one person, but that one person can influence many people around them to do the same and make change. So starting with one person can ultimately end up with, even though change isn't going to happen tomorrow, it'll happen in small ways. So just acknowledging those ways.
Thanks, Caitlin.
I agree with what Caitlin and Dean said. A good part of fixing the solution is making sure that our youth knows how beautiful the nature is that we're trying to protect. I haven't always been so involved in protecting the environment, but recently I visited Puerto Rico and I was swimming in the ocean and I looked down and I saw a massive coral reef. And then next to it, I saw a bunch of white dead coral reef, and I knew that I later found out that that was all dead because of us, and it really motivated me and my family to help protect the water we were swimming in and help make a more of an initiative to protect the environment. So I
Right.
feel like part of fixing this is to give the youth more of a desire to see nature before we protect it.
Good point.
And then I wanted to mention, so I know in the past I wasn't as like strong with trying to help the environment as much because I never truly understood the importance or like recognized it. And
Mhm.
I fell into that portal where I would try to ignore it or thought it wasn't as serious as it was and was in denial. And then last year, my friend transferred to the school and she's vegan, but also extremely eco-friendly. She uses almost no plastic, and when she does, it's only reusable plastic containers. She doesn't even use plastic pens. She uses bamboo pens. And then she even at lunch doesn't use just regular napkins. She brings reusable like mini towels to lunch. She's very eco-friendly. And even when like I would have a water bottle and I would even like toss it out, she would be extremely upset at me and tell me like what I'm doing is harming and causing so much more problems and that I should just take that step and place in the recycling because it's truly not that hard. And so just seeing how motivated she was and how important it really was to her changed my perspective and made me see how important the matter really is.
Wow. So one person really changed your perspective. How did you? That's a really good segue, Julia. Thank you. Then how did you get involved in it, Dean? Or why are you concerned about it or passionate about it or interested if most kids in your school aren't? How did you get involved with the environment?
For me, it's always just been an interest from when I was really young. And that's grown over the years strongly, especially in high school, where I'm now president of my high school's ecology club, and we work on a lot of these environmental projects and gardening and things like that. But I think essentially my mindset has always been someone has to do something.
Hmm. Is there any particular area of caring for creation that is particularly of interest to you?
Caring for Creation being Laudato Si.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite a big fan of that book. My favorite chapter is the integral ecology chapter, where
Uh-huh.
the Pope really emphasizes in our major dependence on the environment as a human race and how interconnected the crisis is to all other issues,
Yeah.
whether they be social or economic. And I really I believe the Pope envisions a future in this book where we have integrated ecology into our societies and our everyday lives. And jumping off like the NASA video that we watched, I believe we have to get rid of this notion of progression versus a return to nature. I feel like instead we should use our technology and our innovation to live with and save our environment. Because I believe that's really what it means to be a steward of creation, to use our human gifts to protect the beauty around us.
Great. Thank you, Jean.
Of course.
How did you get involved in it, Julia? Oh, you told us already. Your friend inspired you. Braden, how did you get involved in this kind of work and interest?
So over the summer, I went to a camp in North Carolina, Wilmington. And most of the work that we did, we were at a sea turtle hospital. And we were looking at all the different sea turtles and what they were in for. And a vast majority of them were actually in for single-use plastics. Now, what a lot of people don't know about sea turtles is that their main food is jellyfish. And they have these things called papillae down their esophagus that makes it a one-way track. So when they see a plastic bag just floating in the ocean, right, they mistakenly digest it as a jellyfish. But because of papillae, they can't regurgitate it back up. So most of the time they end up suffocating or just dying from the plastic bag. So that seeing that and knowing how many times I've used the plastic bag really just motivated me to try and work with the resources that I had inside of my school, actually, campus ministry, to help combat the changes.
Wow. Wow, that is wonderful. Caitlin, how about you? What got you involved in it?
What got me involved in all these different problems was just all the different clubs I am involved in, specifically the Environmental Club and Justice Club, both promoting watching all these videos about specifically pollution interests me, and just understanding specifically plastics, all the plastics that go into some of the products we use every day, understanding that even though we think we're recycling, sometimes we're doing more damage by not recycling properly. So just understanding our own actions and being cautious of what we're really doing.
Interesting. What do you think, what would you say was the most meaningful activity that you've ever been involved in so far? Because you've got a lot of life ahead of you. But so far, what has been some of the best environmental activities that you've been involved with other young people?
I would have to say I attended the March to End Fossil Fuels in New York
When
in
was that?
2023.
In
2023. Yeah, last year.
Wow, I
and
didn't even
I have
know
to
about
say,
it.
It was the passion there was unlike anything I've ever seen. There were so many different groups and so many voices together, all united under one cause. And it was really moving to see. On a more local note, I guess, I really enjoy working with classmates at my school's ecology club, and just that work that we do together really brings us all together under that same unifying purpose.
What are some of the things that you've done with your group?
I'd say our largest accomplishment has been, there's this sector in the middle of our school that was entirely filled with junk and debris from its early days of construction. And over the years, we've transformed that into a large and entirely native garden. I'd have to say that is definitely our proudest achievement at St. Joe's.
That is wonderful. Great. And how about you, Caitlin? Has there anything that you've done with your environmental group at school that's been really moving for you or inspiring?
Well, at the Mount, we adapted this year the Laudato Si Action platform. So
Wonderful.
all of our environment, like the Environmental Club, Animal Club, Marine and Wildlife Club, Gardening Club, all came together as one. But
Wonderful.
each of the branches are still adapting their own beliefs. So the animal club, for example, will go to the animal shelters and just learn more about the day, like the different aspects that those shelters adapt to. The gardening club will work on gardening and different ways of planting and preserving our plants outside. And the environmental club, we do a lot of campus cleanups. So just understanding that how much garbage we use per day.
You know, I read this week that each one of our families throws away approximately 66 pieces of plastic a week. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. Julia and Braden, how about you? What's the best activity that you've been involved with your colleagues?
So I am the vice president of the Hope Club, which stands for Help Our Planet Earth Club. And probably
Say
the
that
most,
again slowly. Hope Club?
yeah, Hope Club, and it stands for Help Our Planet Earth. So,
Ah, nice.
and probably the most like inspirational, but also motivating thing we did was when me and a group of other students went out into the neighborhood, and we went to go clean up garbage from around a small creek near us. And it isn't even a large creek. It's not even like, doesn't have water flowing all the time. It's very small. And it was kind of devastating to see that we had almost 3 garbage bags full of plastic and other types of debris from such a small area. So it made us really think, like, if this is how much is in such a small area in our town, like how much is really in larger portions of the world. And it's really like inspired because you really see how sad it is, like to the point that our planet has gone to. But I think that was probably the most inspirational and motivating event that we did for my club.
You did good. How about you, Braden?
So this year, I actually started a club called the Immaculata Wildlife Conservation Club, and we work with obviously conserving the environment. And part of, I had a bunch of members that honestly didn't really know what to do. So what we did, we started to work with an organization, the Great Swamp. They have a refuge for injured birds, and we ran an open house for them. And although we taught a lot of people about all these different types of owls and why they were in the refuge for the first place, it really taught a lot of the youth that we had there on how to make a better impact, and how, although we think that a little inadvertent action doesn't do anything, it really has a much greater impact than we really think.
Wonderful. Do you think any of this involvement with the care of our planet will it impact your further studies or what you might do with your lives? Are you thinking of any of that?
I 100% think it will have a major impact on what it does with my life and what it will do for the later generations to come.
Anyone else?
I agree with what Braden said. I'm already committed to a college and I'm majoring in marketing. So I'm going to Rutgers actually, and there I feel like if I'm majoring in marketing, obviously for what I'm doing is I'm responsible for what a company promotes, what they're going to try and sell, and items that we're going to try and promote. So it makes me really think, like when I'm there, like, and I go after college, like when I go into whatever work field or company that I work for, like, is the things they're promoting something I want to promote? Like if it's a company, if it was for something against the environment, like a water balloon company, like do we really want to promote the use of these single-use plastics? Or would I want to go somewhere that promotes something more eco-friendly, like compostable straws in other areas?
You know, Julia, you're speaking about what Dean said earlier. His favorite chapter of Laudato Si was integral ecology. You're integrating that into your future and your livelihood and what your profession will be. So you are really living Laudato Si. That's wonderful, wonderful. Anyone else want to speak to that about how what you're doing now might impact your future?
Similarly to Julia, I am also committed to college and planning to study biology with like pre-health. And I was gonna incorporate just the overall especially like the human effects on that microplastics. Like they're in our blood now. They're creating diseases such as autism, and just understanding the causes and effects of these different situations and what we can do to either prevent or just better treatment options.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good luck at Rutgers. So, and I know somebody is going to Bucknell. Who's going to Bucknell?
I'm going to Bucknell.
Oh, you're going to Bucknell. And you're going to Rutgers. Great. Terrific. Terrific. Dean, do you want to say?
I was going to say, along the same lines, I haven't decided what college I'm going to, but I do know that I'm most likely going to major in either ecology or environmental science. And that has really just been my calling all my life.
Mhm.
So this purpose definitely has had a tremendous impact on my life and the direction it's going to go.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Let me ask you this. You know, all four of you are so passionate about our planet and caring for it and valuing it and appreciating it. And but so many people, and you referred to this earlier, so many people don't get the urgency of how important this is. And I want to say, but it seems to me, particularly Americans, in other parts of the world, it seems to me they're doing much more and they're much more serious about it. Why do you think we Americans are so either not interested or don't know about it or don't care? You know, Pope Francis keeps telling us there's such an urgency. We have, time is running out. We know that by 2050, there will be more plastic in our oceans than there will be fish. Why don't we get the urgency? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, you can go first.
It's all right. You can go first.
Thank you. I think for us in America, all these crises just seem so far away. You know, we aren't fighting wars in our streets or feeling the economic impact that, let's say, fishing villages in India are facing. Not being able to make a living due to the amount of pollution in their waters and the rising sea levels. You know, the fish aren't popping up where they normally do. So I think we're just or it seems that we're so far away from all that, that it just doesn't seem that urgent to us when it really is in reality.
I 100% agree with what Dean says. I feel like from where I've grown up, and I feel like this is a ongoing issue. I feel like America, we're really protected with what we see, right? I feel like when I traveled to Puerto Rico or other countries, I would just be walking around and you would really just see the impact of these plastics and pollution all throughout the street. You don't have to look very far, as if in America, you really have to start looking for all these issues, when in other countries, it honestly just affects them much more than it affects us.
Mm-hmm. Pope Francis says that what you say, Braden, it affects the poorer countries much more, but the cause is us. We, like the developed countries, and in particular the United States and China, are the biggest polluters. And yet we, even with all of our natural disasters, experience the least impact. The countries that cause the least feel the most. It seems unfair. It does.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it is just the lack of responsibility from a lot of people. I feel like in the United States, like you said, we may not have it as worse as other countries, but we are the cause of it. However, we aren't taking that responsibility seriously. We are just claiming like, well, we made it, but we're not the ones who threw it out and caused the litter. But if we are the ones producing it, how much, quote, better are we than countries who do throw it out? I mean, it comes from the source always.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. What do your parents think of your being involved in this kind of activity? Do they encourage you? Do they wonder why? Are they proud of you? What do they think?
When I first brought up the idea to my parents of starting my own club for the environment, they told me about what they did at my age and how their impact was much less than the impact of our generation is now. And honestly, how much like it affects them nowadays, because they realize that the impact that they didn't have was a greater impact on us. So that's why I feel like having a great impact at our age is, although it won't affect us, it will affect people that are going to come and have to deal with the issues that we left them.
Mm.
Going off of what Braden is saying, for me, it's similar. My parents encourage me because they want me to have an impact and just like use my passion to make change. But at the same time, it's also, I feel like a lot of the problem, which in ways like I get discouraged, is some people around me aren't educated enough to know the problem or see the problem. So they just don't understand the difference between either recycling properly and recycling not, and going back even the difference in countries and understanding that if we are the source of the problem, why are you not bothered that we are the problem causing other countries to live in such a way?
Caitlin, you mentioned they're not educated enough. So our schools should be preparing our children to be more involved in this, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I agree. I know for the Mount specifically, we have assemblies for like specifically Earth Day.
Mhm,
And we promote different ways for like our people to get involved in like our environmental club. We have the Instagram that people can see what we're doing, and
mhm,
just making sure that if there's a big crisis going on, that everyone knows about it and it's being talked about.
mhm.
Yeah, I agree with what Caitlin said. Like as important Earth Day is, like with helping the environment physically, I think what's also most important is spreading awareness about it and educating people about it. So posting and talking about it on social media and educating more people about the day is just as important as going out and helping yourself, because people can't go out and help on that day if they don't know the true meaning behind it. So I think promoting and spreading awareness about it on social media and verbally to your friends and family is just as important.
Great, thank you. We're going to go to questions and answers, but before we do that, let me just ask you one last question. And you've been wonderful. Thank you. You've spoken from your hearts, and you've been very, very inspiring and helpful. But if you had one hope or one dream for your age group, what would it be? Or maybe a word of advice.
I can go first. I'd say if I had one dream for my generation, it would be that we find that perfect formula. We create a society that can coexist with nature. We find that perfect social economic formula that doesn't take more than it can give back. And as for a word of advice for our listeners, I'd say there's always a lot of doom and gloom at these sort of things. So this Earth Day, make sure to go out with your friends and family. Go for like a hike or something. We've had beautiful weather recently.
We have.
Everything's in bloom. So just really go out and see what you appreciate about nature.
That's great advice, Dean. Very wise. Thank you.
I feel like throughout this webinar, a lot of a point that has been brought up a lot of times has been there's been no motivation. I feel like to fix any issue, there has to be a motivator. And I feel like I hope that my generation really gets off the technology and really goes outside and starts to see the beauty of what we're trying to protect.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, I would say that probably my biggest hope is for us to not be so easily discouraged and lose hope about it. I mean, God, he would never abandon us, and especially never abandon anything that he has created for us. And he calls us to live lives of hope and faith. And I think that that is important enough for us to not be discouraged about the state, because there's always a way to fix it.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Wonderful advice.
My hope would be that people would be more appreciative and attentive to the different ecosystems that's on Earth, and just being more aware of what they are doing and taking responsibility for their actions.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, let's see what our audience has to ask us. Laura, can we ask you to move us? Maybe just show the next slide quickly, and then we'll go to the questions and answers.
Sounds perfect.
Okay, this was a survey done by BBC 2 years ago, and it said that nearly 60% of young people approached said they felt very worried or extremely worried in relationship to the climate crises. More than 45% of those questions said feelings about the climate affected their daily lives. 2/3 reported feeling sad, afraid, and anxious. Many felt fear, anger, despair, grief, shame, as well as hope. Some said they were questioning whether when they got married, if they would even bring children into this world. And then the big plastic count shows that, I said this to you before, each family throws away 66 pieces of plastic in a week. So all of that being said, I think our panelists this afternoon have given us some real hope and inspiration and what keeps them going and not discouraged. So let's see what the questions are, Laura, and you can take it from here.
Most certainly. So we have a comment that came in from Karen. She said that she became interested in the environment when Laudato Si was first presented. She would like to use less plastics, but like a lot of people, she doesn't know where to begin. And specifically, Ziploc baggies are her downfall. I feel your pain. They're very...
Julia, I understand you can see the questions.
Yes.
So can you read the question? And because Laura's computer just crashed.
Yeah, so I'll read the first one.
Thank you.
It says, I'm a young 76-year-old and became interested in the environment when Laudato Si first was presented. I would like to use less plastics, but like many people, don't know where to begin. Ziploc baggies are my downfall. I had a thought, maybe the young man from St. Joe's could write a monthly article in the Westfield Leader, making people aware of what we can do to limit plastics and improve the environment.
Wow. Interesting. Any of you want to comment how you begin to use less plastic?
I just want to say the first place that we can start is, of course, alternatives. There are a lot of them out there. You just gotta know where to look. And this comes in the form of plant fiber, plastic-like materials that are biodegradable, wooden materials, and I believe there's numerous others that aren't coming to mind right now. But I just want to say thank you for that call out, and I would definitely love to write some things for your article.
Maybe we can talk about that, Dean. That would be a wonderful activity.
Yeah.
I noticed how you said plastic bags. Actually, my mom has, if you know, Amazon sells these reusable plastic bags that are really, really easy to clean. You can just throw them in the dishwasher or just run water and soap, and within a couple of seconds, you can just have them clean and use them for however long.
Speaking of Amazon, I have to say this because I do use Amazon. It's so convenient. But you know what? Amazon is a really big offender. And Amazon has reduced the use of plastic for its customers in Europe and India, but it has failed to do so for its customers in the United States. And it has increased its plastic use for United States customers. So Amazon, as much as we love them, is one of the biggest offenders and is not doing anything about it for the United States. It's a tough one. Tough one. Is there any other question there, Julia?
Yes, so there's another one. This is from an anonymous person. It says there is an urgency in relation to our own fishing, given the crab, oysters, salmon, and inland lakes, the low number of fish, as well as the contaminated waters with microplastics. So much bottled water use because of low water and or contaminated water in so many communities. To go to the sources of why we are using plastics. And thank you for all you are doing.
Anybody want to comment on that? I know one of the things I've done is simply when I go to the grocery store, you know, they have these plastic bags. If you're going to buy some tomatoes, you take a plastic bag and you put your tomatoes in it. Well, I don't take the plastic bag anymore. I just take the tomatoes. I don't need to put another plastic bag. And I you know, here in New Jersey, you have to bring your own bags to the store. They will not give you bags. And that's right. They shouldn't. But simple things, you know, like using bar soap rather than containers of liquid soap. And just being really conscious of what your town recycles and doing the recycling, you know. Sometimes it's just easy to throw it away, but that's not being responsible, as Julia was saying.
Yeah, I agree. Our school parish community, we in the campus ministry do a lot for the environment. So two things I think are very important is we do ploughing, which is taking like plastic bags and weaving them into blankets and like bedding for homeless and areas in need. And
Wow.
in New Jersey right now, obviously we don't have the plastic bag ban. We've made such an impact with it that we have plastic bags being imported from the state of Pennsylvania, and we take their bags and make it. And then we also have this thing where we take K-cups from coffee and we scoop out the inside to prevent contamination, and we go and put it into a compost bin. And then we take the K-cups and we responsibly recycle every single one of them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. And I don't know, a couple of you mentioned, I think it was you, Caitlin, that mentioned, you know, very often people think that their one little thing isn't going to make a difference. But it does. It does. Just think about one little mosquito in your room. Makes a difference, one mosquito. So it does make a difference that each one of us does something small. I know we're kind of running out of time, and so I want to give it back to Laura now that she has her computer. But thank you so much for your conversation, for your insights, for your thoughts, for your sharing.
Thank you so much for hopping in, Julia, and reading those questions. We do have one more question that I'd like to pose to our panel before we move on. A question came in from Kara that she worries about plastics possibly disintegrating in the dishwasher or even in sinks as they're scrubbed. So she tries to avoid even reusable plastics. Is this a valid worry? Is this something that actually happens?
I can't speak to that. I do not know. I'm sure we can find out.
I feel like that is a valid worry, but from my knowledge, I've not seen any research or studies saying so. But anything you use today, I mean, can disintegrate. So I think it's a very valid worry.
Laura, this is Greg speaking out a little bit out of turn. Do you see the other two comments or questions from Karen Troiano and from Anonymous?
Yes, we're getting
okay. Good.
So we had one comment, a follow-up from Karen, who said that her 13-year-old grandson loves nature and is becoming primed to get more involved in the environment, and would love for him to get involved with the restoration for injured birds at the Great Swamp, and also loves the idea of him starting his own club to help save the environment. So she really appreciated those suggestions.
Great.
Also had a comment about overconsumption and the line from the Lord's Prayer that says, "Give us this day our daily bread," and to focus on only what we need that day, and not to overconsume, overbuy, overpurchase, because a lot of qualities, a lot of those qualities of overconsumption can lead to pollution. And we have one final question before we wrap it up. If we can't use Amazon, where can we find other items to replace these plastics? Very realistic question.
It's a good question. It's going to take more than the 5 of us on this to come up with that answer.
I
I
would, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know I may not have a specific answer, but like I said, my friend previously who is very eco-friendly, I know that she goes to Whole Foods and she goes there to get all of her reusable items that she uses. So I know that's a place that she goes in person shopping. So that's a suggestion.
I have a friend in Brooklyn who refuses to ever use Amazon. She only shops locally. And yeah, she has made that a commitment, and she's really faithful to it. And it's not always convenient. Not always convenient, but so I admire it, that's for sure. But you can only do what you can do, and don't, that's the other thing. Some people can do tremendous things, and that's great. And we should always reach to do more, but we can't all do the same thing. We're not all in the same position. We don't all have the same resources or education. So do what you can do. That's all the Lord expects of you. Oh, that's a rhyme.
And we had one more comment come in, that you might be able to find some products on Life Search, Green America, and that you can also search earth-friendly products, and that a lot of options for buying come up that don't include Amazon. It might have more eco-friendly packaging solutions. I'd also like to show everybody one last comment here, that Renew has a resource that has a lot of great practical suggestions for putting thoughts and putting faith into action. It's called Creation at the Crossroads, and it really delves into a lot of practical ideas of how to save the environment and be stewards of creation in our everyday lives. And we are having a flash sale on it today through Earth Day, through Monday. So if anyone's interested, it's about 20% off for both the individual and for the small group package, which includes 10 books and a leader resource. So we definitely encourage you to explore this and to explore any other options. Our panel here raised a lot of great suggestions on how we can get involved. And even what seems like a small way to us might be a really big impact as we go down the line and influence other people in our lives. So I thank you all for joining us today, and I thank our panelists for being here with us today.
And I'd just like to say to our panelists, we will send you one of these books as a thank you, so you don't have to buy one.
Thank you for having us, by the way.
Thank you.
We'll send it to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for working with me. And we worked hard, and I think we can feel good about what we did. So have a wonderful rest of the day. Next week is Earth Day. And just so you know, there's a meeting in Canada with the UN, and 175 countries have signed on and agreed that they will develop a treaty to end fossil fuels. And that's going to be signed next Earth Day, next week in Ottawa, Canada. So we'll be hearing more about that. Thank you.
Sounds like a good topic for our next webinar.
It does. Fossil fuels. Got it, Dean?
Got it. Thank you for having us.
Thank you all for being here today. I'll leave this up on the screen as people sign off in case anybody is trying to scan the QR code. Thank you again for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Safe travels, Dean.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.